Hello, I'm Justin Smith-Ruyu, and this is the Internet Symposium. Today is September 2nd, 2024. I am back home in Paris, and I'm still experimenting with the various functionalities of video podcasting. The quality is still not as high as it's going to be, but bear with me. One thing I've realized since I recorded the last symposium episode on Leibniz and Russia is, first of all, these things should be a bit shorter. I think an hour and 29 minutes was asking too much of y'all. And secondly, I'm going to try to do this in a way that enables people who have only the audio to follow just as well. So there will be no slides, no PowerPoint, and we're going to rely only on the spoken word. So what is the advantage of watching? Well, I suppose you get to look at me, you get to look at the bookcase behind my head, my ever-growing hair, the slogan on my t-shirt. Other than that, there's really no advantage. I do hope you'll watch anyway, though. So today I'm going to give you probably about a 45-minute long rapid introduction to what I refer to as the history and philosophy of astrobiology, focusing primarily on antiquity through the 18th century. I'm going to talk briefly about the current state of things as well. And I'm going to be defending a particular thesis about extraterrestrials. I'm going to answer the question in the title of today's symposium: why did people start talking about aliens at a certain moment in history? I'm not going to give you the particular argument or the thesis of the argument at the outset, but what I'm going to say is that it has a lot to do not only with the history of cosmology, but also with the history of the life sciences, that it has something to do with a new understanding of what a being must be that emerged in the 17th century that required people to reconceptualize what had previously been celestial intelligences or angels or any number of other non-organic entities now as akin to us in the sense that they were organically composed, such as mammals or reptiles. I guess I did just give the argument away, but now I'm going to make it. I'm going to flesh it out. But let's talk for just a moment about the current state of things. There has been, you might know, a revolution in astrobiology in the past few decades. We are way beyond the world of Carl Sagan and the SETI program, such as it was developed in the late 20th century, I suppose, when I was first exposed to these questions and excited by these questions. The revolution was brought about by a number of converging factors. One is that until the 1990s or so, exoplanets, that is, planets outside our solar system, were merely hypothetical. Now their numbers are racking up at a rapid pace. I can't keep track. There are lots and lots of them. And so our understanding of the so-called Drake equation that takes the number of stars that have planets in the Goldilocks zone of habitability, has to be continually revised because we now know, unlike in Carl Sagan's day, that exoplanets are a pretty normal thing for the universe, right? That our star, the sun, is not really all that exceptional in that it's got these satellites orbiting around it. So that's one of the things. Another element is that we've become much better at detecting biosignatures from far away exoplanets, but also, say, from the moons of Jupiter. That is to say, we can detect the presence of chemicals in the atmospheres of distant bodies that we have reason to believe are the signatures of organic life on those planets or those moons orbiting planets. And these biosignatures are not conclusive. There are almost always other ways to account for their presence there, but they're one of the ways in which we go about assessing the probabilities. And at this point, there are many astrophysicists who take it for granted that it's a near certainty that there is life elsewhere in the universe, strictly for kind of probabilistic reasons. And even I've talked to one astrophysicist recently who says he is, I think this is exaggerated, he is 100% certain that there is life on Europa and Io, and perhaps some of the other moons of Jupiter as well. So this is something that is exciting, of course, but then it comes with a letdown for a lot of people because life can mean many different things, right? And many people are disappointed to learn that these biosignatures are consistent with the presence only of unicellular life, that is to say, microorganisms. And most people have trouble getting as excited about the presence of organisms that are bacteria-like or protist-like than they do about organisms that are mammalian or reptilian, right? Let alone organisms that have complex technology and understand calculus and stuff like that, right? The great likelihood is that our first concrete evidence of extraterrestrial life is going to be of life forms that we can't even hope to communicate with because they're just not that kind of life form, right? So that's and I should also add that this has been in the news a few times in the past few years. People were making a fuss just a few years ago about the phosphine detected in the gases of the atmosphere around Venus that was thought to be a biosignature. Carl Sagan himself had hypothesized that while the surface of Venus is far too hot for to sustain life. It's possible that there are life forms that live and die and reproduce in the atmosphere of Venus. Another news-making another, let's say, frequent item in the news is when we find what might be traces of fossilized organic compounds on Mars or sometimes even on comets. And this is interesting when it's on comets in particular because it seems to corroborate the so-called panspermia hypothesis, according to which life on Earth came from somewhere else. There was another body that struck the Earth at some point 4.5 billion years ago or so, and set the evolution of more complex organisms in motion. Now, panspermia is an ancient notion. There are versions of it in antiquity. We find it a lot in the 17th century in figures like Athanasius Kircher. Today, when we talk about it, it's just the thesis that life comes from elsewhere in the universe initially, that we can trace terrestrial life back to another source off of this planet. And we also talk in terms of hard panspermia, but also soft panspermia. Soft panspermia is just the view that I think the majority of people would be inclined to accept, that the organic ingredients necessary for the recipe of life can be found in many places in the universe, right? And it's just a special circumstance of, the Goldilocks positioning of the Earth, that those organic molecules were not only present, but also came together in the way that gave us life forms. There's also a very interesting theory according to which the Earth is very Goldilocks. And by the way, I'm going to give references in the text part of this podcast. So if you want to know more about the things I mentioned very quickly and sometimes without precise citations, you'll be able to find them in below the recording. So it's so Goldilocks that not only is it the right distance from the sun, but the very special circumstance that made life work here was the impact early on of some major object that broke the moon off from the Earth, which created a special alternation in the daily rhythms of the Earth, in particular the rising and the lowering of the tides, which is something like, if you're a scientist in a laboratory and you're working with some fluid that you want to get really nicely mixed up, but you have to go home for the evening, you put it in that special machine that rocks it back and forth, right? That's kind of like the Earth. You've got this constant rocking, like a cradle almost, a gentle rocking of the organic compounds that results from the special relationship between the Earth and the moon. It's a beautiful theory. It's all very speculative, of course. But in any case, the problem of what counts as an extraterrestrial, if we found some microscopic life forms in the atmosphere of Venus, could we appropriately say we had found aliens? That sounds kind of like a stretch, again, just because in our normal usage in the 20th and 21st centuries, aliens have been typically bipedal and either mammalian or reptilian in the way we represent them. And this, I think, is an opening to comparison to other historical possibilities. For example, you might be familiar with the idea in Stoic cosmology in late antiquity, according to which the cosmos itself is a giant animal, right? And I suppose also you could cite certain somewhat heretical Christian sects, Mormonism. You can kind of see this coming in Thomas Hobbes as well, according to which God has a body. Most Christian sects want to insist at tout prix, absolutely, at any cost, that the world is not God's body. In any case, the Stoics bite the bullet and say the universe itself is an animal, right? And so that doesn't look like an alien either, but it is, in any case, a way of projecting out into the universe as a whole the biological nature of the entities that we today, in the 21st